Welcome to the Practically Positive podcast. This is more than mindset. In this series, I'm going to chat to some amazing people all about their shift in perspective, how they look at things from a different direction, and how they've inputted that and the difference it has made to their lives. This podcast is for us to have those conversations that are still taboo, that people still shy away from talking about. We're going to look at positive inspiration. We're going to look at shifts in mindset, and we're going to look at practical ways to implement this into positive daily habits. So if this sounds like something for you, then please subscribe and listen along. Share it with your friends, share it with people that you think would love to get talking. And let's all get talking. Today on the podcast, I have the wonderful Caroline Wilson from Hot Toddi. This is what she says about herself: a passionate believer in how social media can open doors for businesses through building relationships and engaging in conversations. Now, I absolutely believe this. I met Caroline, first of all, at a Business Durham event. She was one of the speakers, and her energy and enthusiasm came off the stage in bucket loads. I knew there and then I had to connect with her, and I followed her for the last few months and love her energy. And so, of course, it was a no-brainer when I came to record this new series of the podcast that I wanted to get Caroline on. She is fantastic at what she does. She brings so much energy, but as well as being a wonderful business owner, she is a mum. She has chickens. We'll talk about more about that in the podcast. And the other things we touch on are how she gets that balance between being a mum, being a business owner, being a woman, and the ways that she does that. There's a nod to our mum. We talk about baking and everything in between. So get comfy, have a listen, and let's get talking. So I am thrilled to have with me today the wonderful Caroline, and I'm going to hand straight over to you. Thank you so much for being here. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Caroline Wilson. I've been running my business, Hot Toddi, for about 11 years now. I've got two children, Pepper and Rolo, so they keep me very busy. I have got maybe 17 chickens, maybe 12 that just hatched over the weekend, so very fresh little babies. And yes, I spend most of my time when I'm not helping businesses with their social media in my garden or doing a bit of gym. I make the time to do that because I think that's very important for me. And baking, as you just heard, because the buzzer just went off. Because whenever people come in person and have sessions with me, I always like to have them cake, and hence the all the chickens to have the eggs, basically. So yeah, that's it. But yeah, very, hopefully that helps. A little bit of who I am, what I do.
Absolutely. And I'm going to come back to a little bit about your absolutely fabulous chickens and your baking and what you sort of touched on there about making time for you. But we'll come back to that. I want to start off. You and I met last year at a event. It was a Durham Business Growth event where you were one of the speakers. And I had come along not really sure what to expect about social media. And as lots of people listening know, that is something that I do with my Northern Laugh Lounge hat on. And so I really was intrigued to sort of come and see it from a different perspective. And what I loved about the day, there was lots of different people talking about lots of different things. What I loved about the day was your energy. It's the first thing, as soon as you got up, literally the energy in the room shifted. And I was like, she is my people. I talk a lot about showing up as yourself, being who you are, and putting that energy out into the world. And for me, what it does is repel the people that we don't want to be around, but will draw to you the people who are your people, who you are aligned with, who just get you. And that came across the way you kind of interacted with the audience. There was lots of head nodding, there was lots of reassurance, certainly lots of eye contact with me, which I really then I felt absolutely part of what you were talking about. So thank you for that. Well done, you 5-star. But that to me is a real skill, because I've been to lots of things where people don't do that, or maybe are only able to do that. So you just having that energy and having that personality, is that something you have practiced? Have you honed it? Is it just who you are? And have you used it as a superpower?
My goodness, such a good question. So that is not something that has always come naturally to me. That I think public speaking is the number one fear after dying.
Yeah.
So 100% not something that I was good at. And it's lovely because actually I look back at a time when I just started my business and I was in a race course at York, and I watched, and I know that you know her, Nicola Little speak, and I just died inside thinking, I will never do that. I will never be able to do that. And she thought I was a speaker because she looked at me and I was just late to her talk. And she looked at me and asked for the time, how much time she had left. And I remember dying inside thinking, this is a guide girl moment. I am prepared. I have my watch on. So I just went 10 minutes and held up 10 hands. And I was absolutely dying. And I thought, oh my God, that was awful. Everyone looked at me. But that is not something that I thought I'd ever, ever, ever in my wildest dreams be able to do. I have practiced, and I suppose with competence comes confidence. And that's something that I have then thought, actually, the more I speak, the more I learn, the more I think, actually, I can do this and I need to do this. And those getting out of your comfort zone is actually where that growth is. But yeah, lovely Nicola, who is now off of Celebrate Difference,
Mhm.
is one of those pinnacle moments that I think, look back at that and think, God, how much have I done in 11 years to think I nearly died when everybody looked at me for a time check, let alone then think, spring forward to when you heard me speak. And still I get the jitters and still I find it awkward and uncomfortable. But then I just think, actually, I'm just the messenger. And I say that to everybody as well when I work with them. You're just the messenger of what is your business and why you do your business and what's your why, and home into that. And remember, you can do this, but obviously the speaking part, I still get told I speak too quick. I think, yeah, I still get told that. And I go off on tangents because I get excited. And also, I don't think anybody would be able to share. So when people say, can I have my slides? I'm like, yeah, take them. Because if you can reshare what happened to me last week when I re-deliver this and update it, that's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I've never had that as a conversation, to be fair, but I'm never worried about people having my slides or taking anything, because I know tomorrow I'll have learnt more, seen more, done more, have more experiences. So it is definitely something I've 100% worked on in 11 years, because I just think of that Nicola moment where I nearly died.
I
And
absolutely love that. I love that. And I wonder if she knows that that was a pivotal point. Have you ever shared that with her?
I've told her, yeah, I've
Oh,
told
you
her.
did? Marvelous. Because I was
Yeah,
going to say she'd be thrilled. She'd be thrilled to know that. Um, I love that kind of honesty, because I think women, especially in business, are taught, show up, be your best. Don't tell people what you can't do. Don't, cover all of it. And actually, absolutely not. Like, go, you know what? I'm learning. And as you said, every time you do it, you get better, because that's where the growth is. That is where that learning happens. And I listen to lots and lots of kind of mindset coaches and lots of people talking about this. And when they talk to celebrities, I love listening to celebrities talking about it that have this sort of same mindset. And they all say, actually, the second you stop having nerves is the second you stop caring. If you don't go on a stage or a set in their case and have a little bit of nervous energy, then you don't know what you're doing. It's become that you're just regurgitating stuff, and then nobody wants that. So actually, I love that you say you still get that, because it's
yeah,
about framing that into that it's excitement rather
yeah,
than fear for a start. And I
exactly.
love that message. And I've shared this before. A friend of mine who helps people publish books, she's a publisher, and helps them put their books into the world. One of the things that she says when people are always saying about, oh, well, who'd want to listen to this? Who'd want to read my book? Or, in your case, who'd want to know? Well, I know it's about making it about them. That actually you're keeping that information from them and it might help them. So I love that when you're saying you're just the messenger.
Yeah.
It's a great way to make it not about you and take away that fear a little bit, for sure. Um, so on that, you talked about making time for you, and that's important.
Oh,
So about, because
100%.
you're super busy, as lots of women that will be listening to this are in business. We wear all the hats in our businesses, that we're like doing multiple jobs within the business, but also then at home with the children, you're kind of coordinating who needs to be where at what time with what kit, never mind the chickens. How do you make sure you prioritize time for you? And again, how did you learn that that was something that was important to you?
Oh, I definitely learned very quickly. So when I first started my business, my mum bought me a cookery book and said, you need to do something different because you look at your screen, like unless you physically have to be in a meeting or do something, you are working. So she said, you need to learn to do something else. So as a part of that, because it was my birthday, one year, she bought me some PT sessions, and I have stuck with that, even sort of like loosely when I had the children. So I've stuck with that because she said, not that I needed a PT, but she says, I think you need somebody and you need
Yeah.
something for you. So that has been something really important. And obviously, at that time, when you're just starting business, you can't afford to do stuff. So you're like, I'm not doing that. I can't spend that. And then when somebody does it for you, you then see how much you get out of it. And then you think, actually, it's totally an investment. So that's something that I just started with once a week, and then I've sort of built on that with other things that I make time for. So that is one thing that I know isn't a thing for everybody, but for me it was really important. Then the year after, like I said, she for my birthday, my mum is brilliant at these sorts of things, bought me a cookery book and said, and so every Saturday morning, it used to take me all Saturday morning to make one cake. Now, that cake that just came out the oven, I must have done it in about, I've got it down to about 3 minutes. Like, just because I just know, dum, 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 dum. But I'm forever grateful for that cookery book, and I still have it. I still probably use it 3 or 4 times a month. I love it. And then, yeah, so I think my mum sort of told me that you need to, like you would a meeting, make time for you because you can't pour from an empty cup. And that really became quite clear because I think in the early days, I managed lots of social media accounts, and that was literally 24/7. So unless I was going to the gym, or the other thing that I did as well in the early days is I volunteered in a charity shop and did the boutique section. I
Mm.
loved that. So Friday mornings, again, I'm going to be out the office, couple of hours, and all I did was prepare their boutique section with branded clothing. And I loved that. I did that for maybe even a few years. I really, really loved that. So I think that I got this feeling that I was giving back and I wasn't connected to anything, and I just needed to be there, do that little job and with my little team, and I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think it's taking that time to know that actually what you do, nobody will die if it doesn't get done instantly, and then setting those boundaries, and putting the time in your diary like you would a meeting. So like we put in 2 p.m. today, then I know that before work on a Thursday, I go to the gym, and after work on a Tuesday, I'll go to the gym. And I just know that that just needs to happen to make my week flow. And I don't want to go, don't get me wrong, I do not want to go, but it's just habit now and routine that keeps me going. And I did think I'd not, like I'd come out the other side of it and I'd suddenly be like trained and I'd be able to do it myself. But the fact is, you need your accountability, don't you? And I just would never do it myself. Never would do it myself.
But you touched on something there about creating habits, and for me, that's exactly what it is. Any amount of change, even when it's good things for ourselves, like being fit, like being outside. I call my protected time to work on the business CEO time. I was just talking about this on a live this morning,
Love it.
and I put my diary as CEO time. But that's time for me to have a meeting with me, because I am my team, so I need to have a meeting to tell myself what needs to be done. And it's really important to have that protected time to sort of take a step back. But it's just as important to have me time as Sarah Jane, not CEO, to get my hair done, to sit and read a book without feeling guilty. And it's about building those little habits, isn't it? Building those times in so actually that is that time, it's blocked out and it becomes a habit. Um, do you have, because one of the things that I am huge about are those daily habits. So one of mine before I go to bed is do my gratitude diary, and that starts my sort of nighttime routine. Do you have things like that in your week that just help you get in the right mindset? Because you are so full of energy, but life happens and the kids drive us mad and clients don't do what we want to do when we want them to do it, etc. So what helps you charge up, top up that energy?
Gosh,
Fill
you
you
are
up as
so
you go.
right. You are so right. So I think also this is very new for me, but I've realized that I need to home in over the last sort of 18 months. I've really been working to my cycle, which sounds a bit woo, and it's not really. I didn't think this was a thing, and somebody mentioned to me, and I was like, "Do you think?" And actually, I've only really, since in the last 18 months, noticed that actually I do have a bit more of a flow and a pattern, and it's much more consistent. So I've really, in the last 18 months, again, been in check more with my hormones and done lots of things differently. But that's another conversation. But I think now that I can see that I know the last 2 weeks of the month, they're not my greatest. If I'm going to be doing something, it's the first 2 weeks. So if I'm talking, if I can, and there's a preference, or if I can, be a little bit more reactive or be a bit easier. But if I know that I'll also need a lot of outside time as well. So I think, and I know you're doing this as well, you're working on your steps, aren't you?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I've set myself a little challenge to do a half marathon walk for charity in July. So then I've been doing a bit of training. So in March, did I do, who was it for? This is going to test my memory. I did two different charities. I know March was Tommy's, but February was a different charity, and I raised money for both of those, doing a step challenge. So one was walk a mile a day in February, and another one was 8,000 steps in March, which isn't a lot, to be honest. If you think 2,000 is roughly a mile. So yeah, so I did that as a little preparation, but I got I've got an under stepper desk walker. So I just
Brilliant.
did some steps on those because obviously not great time to be walking. Um, but I do find that I also have got stricter at saying no. So I'm really
Mm.
precious with my time. I think that to have good energy, you need to be around good people, well, people that lift you up, and then the people that don't, you need to identify that really quickly and sort of filter them out and be like, no. Um, I got a lot better at, if it's not a fit for me, I don't try and fix everybody. I'm like, no, I'm just going to tell you straight away that's not for me, or I won't be able to do that, and got better at a bit of advanced planning. So I'd always try and squeeze people in and be like, yeah, no, I could do that next week. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then all the time you're dreading it because you know that actually that's just really upskilled your week and you won't be able to do X, Y, and Z because you've said you can squeeze somebody in. So now I'm really honest and been like, if you want me, 4 to 6 weeks is more realistic for me to know that I'll be able to do what I need to do before I even see you, and that'll flow way better for me, and I won't dread it because I'll be like, I'm pulling my hair out, prepping the night before or whatever, which nobody wants to do. So
And I
lo-
think that word no, like I couldn't say it. You know,
mm,
me mouth, me head, sorry, be like doing this. Yeah, what do you need? I'm like, stop agreeing to things.
yeah.
And for me, it was very much, I was a people pleaser. I say
Mm,
was, I still can be, for sure. It's something I'm working on. But I was very much that, make sure everybody else is happy at the detriment, it turned out, of then me. And I think you're right, it's protecting that time, isn't it? You touched on boundaries before and learn to say the word no, or even just not right now, or yes, I will, but these are my terms, is actually really, really empowering. And I found, the right people will respect that and go, yeah, not a problem. I'll wait and spend time with you to do this. It
mm.
took us weeks to get this date in our diary, but we put it in, we planned it, so we knew it was in, that suited us both. And how do you find, though, putting that out there and certainly in the business world? I know I've had to say no to clients, and at first, again, when you start up a business or you start new, you want to say yes to everything.
Oh, yeah.
How did you find it when you started saying no to people? Was it really icky? Did you struggle with it, or was it just learned over time that, as you've just said, not to overstretch yourself and just sort of, I know one lady I was talking to talks about putting an extra tax on it. Someone she doesn't really want to work with, she'll kind
Mm.
of charge extra because either put them off or she's being paid extra because she doesn't really want to work with that person, which I loved.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
we call that hassle tax.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That's not quite what she called it, but I'll not repeat it on public
Oh,
consumption. That's what she called it. But I like your version. I like hassle tax for sure. But I know when I started saying no, actually it made work so much more enjoyable. It made outside of work so much more enjoyable because you were doing the things that brought you joy, and actually you were then coming at them with more energy, more motivation.
yeah.
How have you found that as a kind of as you start putting those boundaries in place and putting those timelines in?
Well, I think that when you start saying, I don't generally say no, I'll go no, but if you're desperate for me, these are my time frames. And I like to give sort of like, or potentially this person could help, or this person could help, maybe a bit sooner. I'm not really sure. So I don't like to say just a flat no, because again, the people pleaser in me, I want to fix everybody, help everybody get somewhere. So I'm always like, oh, that seems a bit flat and a bit rude. So I'd always try to be as the helpfulest as I possibly can and really kind and say, yeah, I'd love to do that. This is the earliest I could do it. I'm so sorry. You know, this is just how it is. But if you can't wait that, if that's too long, and I can think of one scenario where I literally booked somebody in. It was October and I booked them in February and they were like, are you sure? And I was like, honestly, I'm so sorry, but yeah, this is it, because I know that I need the children. I want to take time off for Christmas, and I knew that I could go into some of their Christmas holidays, and I just was like, no, I'm not going to do that, because I just know that will make me feel so miserable and it won't be worth the money. It's just not worth it. So if you're happy, I can do it here, but these are the people that might be able to help in the meantime. And yeah, they were like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's fine." And then I offered them as a sweetener as well. I'll ring you in January and I'll give you some more, like more value. I was like, I can ring you. We can spend 20 minutes just to touch base, see what's different, what's changed. But I'll be watching. I'll be here. You can email me. And then they were like, oh, well, maybe that's not so long away. And I was like, oh, but it did feel like, oh God, you've been really precious here. But I thought you can cram it in and you've done that before, but you'll regret it and no one will have the best of you. So I just thought, no. But I do also do your gratitude diary. I think I've done that for maybe 5 or 6 years. I've done like a daily gratitude. And I think what's changed in 5 or 6 years is absolutely mega. And I heard somebody talk called, I don't know if you've come across her, Victoria Knowles Lax. And
Oh no,
she
I'll look
wrote
her up.
a book and she had a business, she sold it, and now she's gone into sort of self-development and has written this book. And I remember at the time I'd just had Pepper now, and she hadn't had her little boy yet. And I remember thinking, how does she do this? Just how? How does she do this? And then I thought, actually, I'm going to try. And then the things that changed were so monumental. I looked for the joy, I reframed, and like you say, back to that being frightened and scared, like the same as fear as excitement, isn't it? Same feeling as excitement. And so then I sort of started to, like you say, reframe things and be like, oh, that's good. And I listened to a mindset podcast this morning and he said, instead of saying, why has it happened to me, reframe it as if you've chosen for it to happen. So that sounds really hard if somebody has died or lost a job or you've had a car crash, you know, whatever the horrible thing is, or a terrible disease, but sort of reframe it like you've chosen it to happen and make it be like a lesson where, you know, like actually this is triggering some really big change for me, which is good change.
Yeah, and that is a really good example. I think a lot of the time we focus on the problem, so the thing that has happened to us. And I talk about this a lot. So when my husband and I separated, it was, one of the hardest things. It took me 18 months to actually physically, make that decision because of lots of different factors. And I remember at that time feeling that this was happening to me. And the choice was stay in the marriage that wasn't working. We were both, really not being very nice to each other because of the pain that we were both in, or leave and then come from a broken home. And I hate that term. That's what we used to call it. So it was, my parents separated when I was 5. So 40
Oh my
plus years,
God.
that was oh wow, that was the term back then. It's an awful term. Thankfully, we don't use it today. But in my head, little 5-year-old me had that term, and I was like, I'd promised to myself ridiculously at 5, my child would never have come from a broken home. And so I had these two choices. This thing was happening to me. And I remember somebody saying to me, like, you want choice 3 over here, which is live happily ever after in like a Disney movie. And you haven't got that choice. You have, and I was like, well, I haven't got neither of those are what I want. Yeah, but it's still a choice. And as soon as I took control of, yes, both awful choices, but as soon as I took control, it stopped it happening to me. It became about me looking for a solution and how do I find. Naturally now, my little boy's dad and I have what that little 5-year-old always wanted in me. which was two parents that want the best for their little one and who absolutely love each other and love the little one and put them first. It doesn't look like, the conventional way I thought it would. But by reframing that and focus on what is the solution to get what I want here and not fix on the problem. And I think that's, a very extreme sort of example of it. But if you can do that in anything, if you can look at, right, what is the solution here? What is the thing that I'm going to move towards rather than getting stuck in the where I am and what's happening to me? It can make a huge difference, can't it? It can massively then change, like you say, that outlook on how you show up and how you kind of come across things.
Yeah, definitely. It's, never usually what's happening to you, 90% is your reaction, isn't it? How you sort of treat it. So reframing it, as difficult as it can be, definitely is the best thing you can do, because otherwise you're just stuck and resented and bitter and negative. And I've been hearing a lot about, and I'd love your actually thoughts on this, about raising your frequency. What do you,
So
um,
to say that I don't do about mindset, I am very much a science-based sort of mindset person. So my background is NLP, so neuro linguistic programming, and it's all about the science of how we program our brains. So lots of stuff about frequency, about energies. I guess I just don't understand enough because I can't. I'm that Downton Thomas, of like, well, why is that happening? I was that kid. Why is that happening? Why are they doing that? I say that kid. I'm still that adult that needs to know the why. But I absolutely also believe, and I don't understand it, and I think part of this comes down to, for me, faith in that you will, when I talk about changing who you are and how you show up, will draw the right people to you. I thought it's the same thing, isn't it? It's the frequency that, like, your energy in that room, I just knew I wanted to follow you and connect with you and kind of, I almost felt like I was compelled. Like there was no choice in that. It was just like, I have to connect with this person. And we did, we sort of chatted straight away. I was like a little magnet to you at lunchtime over our snack. But I think, it probably is that frequency, isn't it? Of what you put out into the world, I believe, is what you draw back. And I think it is really interesting. And when you change how you show up, and I've been living this way, I guess, in this what I call positive focus, which is a little bit of gratitude, it's a little bit of 12-step work, it's a little bit of the NLP stuff, all sort of mushed together along with my life experience and learning to respond to stuff, not react to it, which I think is a huge difference. And I didn't used to understand the difference between that. But it is about how I show up, because actually, when I show up more confident and I show up believing in me better, that instantly tells the other people around me how they're allowed to treat me back. Because when I didn't have boundaries before, when I was a people pleaser, you were giving away that permission and that power for people to either not respect your time or not respect who you were, or just even, that you were insignificant. And I think when you start to show up in a different way, it does change how people will act around you because they're getting a different response. So I guess that's in that sense, putting that frequency or that energy out there is definitely something that will by default change how other people are around you. And I went into a room recently and I was dressed in the all bright pink, a giant bright pink hair one, and it was a sea of like grey and black. I think there was one guy in dark green who was being a bit colourful, but it was literally grey, black, and navy. And I walked in bright pink. I mean, the heads were literally on like swivels. And some guy came up to me and said, "Oh, you're a lot." And he absolutely meant it as an insult. And I just went, "Yeah, no thanks." And he didn't know what to say. But like, I was like, one, how rude. But I was like, you know what? I don't even want to talk to you because you are not my people. And instantly, just me showing up and not caring just stopped me having to have that conversation or like whittle it out. But it took a long time because a few years ago, that would have really hit me and be like, oh my goodness, I just need to leave the room. So it's about kind of repelling the people that aren't your people and drawing together the people that are your people. And I think absolutely shifting that frequency or that energy you're putting out there is the way to do it for sure.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think that is brilliant, because negative before feedback used to really get to me. But if it's not positive, and I've also learned, if you can't do anything about it, it's just pointless. Whereas, and I've also learned that your biggest critics are usually the ones that aren't even, they're not even putting themselves in the ring. So they
Yeah.
cannot compare because they've never been in your shoes. So also I'm really now quite picky who I have ask for feedback off, like, although, people are willing to give, aren't they? That people are all got an opinion. But I suppose it's whose opinion matters with those people that have been where you are or trying to get where you are, or other people that, that are, like, are really you admire. They're the types of people you want actually, and they'll give really positive feedback to you, like, I liked this, I like that, but maybe work on X, Y, and Z. And it's like, actually, that's really useful. But just saying you're a lot is, well, like you say, that's a real positive, because that doesn't sound like how long did you stay in that room by instant? Did you like
Oh, I mean,
out in 10?
no, no, I stayed and owned the space. I was like, I am not making myself smaller or less to make you feel comfortable. That is a you problem. And I think that's what we do. And certainly I did when I was in, people pleasing peak. Is when you try and fit into a room, if someone then does criticize you, you will take it on board. Oh, I need to change. I need to mold. I need to fit here. But actually, when you show up as yourself, like you, I do talk really fast. Shock horror, I talk a lot. That was the thing. On all my school reports, Sarah Jane talks a lot. Tell me something I don't know. To me, that's my superpower, that I get to use my voice to help other people. But if someone's saying something about you that and it isn't, shock horror, that's just who you are, like it makes it much easier to go like, thanks for your opinion that I didn't ask for, and just ignore it. I always remember my dad years ago, somebody said to me, and I was really offended. I was like, oh, I'm really offended at that. Like, and I was having a right rant on. He went, well, just don't take offense at it. Oh,
No.
and I was like, me? He said, you literally sit there in a sentence and say, take offense. So just don't take it, put it back down and leave it about then. And you know what? That in that one little moment, I was like, oh yeah, I don't have to. Because again, it wasn't someone that was in my circle. It wasn't someone that I cared about their opinion. It was somebody absolutely not, involved, but felt that they could share that opinion that I hadn't asked for. And I just had this like light bulb moment of like, oh yeah, I don't need to care what they think because it doesn't matter. Like I don't care. But it was just like so obvious when he said it. But again, I hadn't ever taken that on board. And it's unbelievable when you start to again show up as you, how much easier that becomes to not listen to those things. And I know when I was doing my training, my coach at the time had said, generally when people say those things, to try and put you down, it's because one of two things. They're either jealous that they're not doing it and are trying to pull you down to make themselves feel better, or that they haven't got the confidence or the imagination to do what you're doing. And how often you
Yeah.
say to someone, I'm going to try this, whatever it might be in your business or in life, and they go, oh, I wouldn't do that. They're literally
Mm.
saying, I wouldn't do that. So, well, that's all right. I'm not asking
Yeah.
you to, but I'm going to give it a go. But it's amazing how much we
Yeah.
take that on board, isn't it? And how we kind of, oh, do you think I shouldn't? But actually, it's because they haven't
Yeah.
got that imagination. So just don't listen to those people that aren't your chosen people that you would listen to.
Yeah, and usually what they're saying is what they're criticizing is what's missing in them, I definitely
Yeah,
think. And I
definitely.
suppose when you have these little people around you, like your son and my daughter, with sometimes she's similar age to your son, and it's when you're giving them advice on their friendships, which inevitably are hilarious, aren't they? They're so
Mm-hmm.
interesting, and they're saying
Yeah.
about this, that, and the other. And sometimes I just say, like, I'm like, well, maybe they're thinking that they would like to be able to do that. And maybe you should say, do you want to join me? Like, instead of saying, oh, say, why don't you have a go? Or why don't you join and do that with me? But you're right. I do think sometimes those feedback parts are just not always great. But do you have like a chosen, like, person or people that's a circle that you're like, business people, I actually respect their opinion of who you go to if you're doing something new?
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head about people that I've got various people that I go to for different things as well. I think that's okay to have different people for different things that you need. So I've got some friends that will be brutally honest and be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Sarah, that is the worst idea you've ever had. However, let's see how we can make it a better idea. And I need that because sometimes I can go off on a tangent. Do you know what I mean? I do like a side quest. And sometimes I need those people to go like, let's just roll it back a little
Yeah.
bit and yeah. So I'm going to go you when I want the honest truth. I've got other people that I go to where I just want some cheerleaders that like, Sarah, you are awesome. Go for it. Do it. I'm here with the backup car. Like, let's just do it. What do we need? Before I've even told them the plan, they're in the car driving. Do you know what I mean? We're there. And I think it's right to have different people for different things. And for sure, I've got people in my business that are peers that are doing similar things where you can have a good old like, oh, this is happening, and get your frustrations out, or say, I don't know how to do this. Like, I feel like I'm going mad with technology quite often for me. And then also people that we are kind of looking up to, and not in a comparison. So people say, oh, you shouldn't compare yourself to somebody else. And not in a negative way, for sure. I don't get, comparisonitis, as I like to call it, where you're then like, well, they're doing that, I'll just not bother because who's gonna? But actually, people that inspire you, like, well, in a good way. Well, actually, if they go out and do that, so can I? Because look at the impact they're having. And if you can be inspired by something, you look to them for mentorship or leadership or just a bit of feedback on something, then absolutely. I was listening. I absolutely love Davina McCall. Absolutely love. I've heard her live last year, which I was thrilled about. But listen to her new podcast, and she's been talking to lots of different experts in various fields, and some of them are sharing and talking about the things that I teach. So some of the mindset stuff, and it's lovely listening to people that are, to me, experts in their field, talking about the same thing that I teach in my workshops, because it just gives you that, like, I'm on the right track. If these people are talking about it, then I'm talking about the right thing. So absolutely have people around you that will, back you blindly, be kindly honest when needed, and will cheer you on. And then have if you can find that community of people who will just have your back, whether, like you said, it's about collaborating, of like, right, I can't do this, but this person can, or I can do, but they're better at it than me, so go and see them. If you can collaborate with people and have that, I absolutely believe that we are stronger together than we are individually, for sure. And women in business for years have been pitted against each other. She'd be like, I know this, and I'm going to keep it to me because it'll give us the edge. Because for years in business, we didn't have the edge. And we need to stop that. I worked for a long time in the beauty industry, and it was awful in the department stores because this department wouldn't talk to that department. One beauty house wouldn't talk to that beauty house, and if you're friends with that person because they were on that counter, it was just awful. I'm like, why are we letting this happen? Why are we, going along with it? Because then we're saying it's all right. And I think it's up to us as women just to shift that and go, you know what, we're stronger together. I'm not great at everything, but let's use those people around me to be the best that I can be and that they can be, because by working together, we lift each other up. I absolutely believe we're all better the more we work together, for sure.
100%. 100%.
So I'm going to ask one last little question.
Okay.
And I don't tell people this in advance because I like them to think about it.
Oh gosh.
I don't want them to think about it, sorry. I want them to be able to spring it on them. But if you could go back to 5-year-old you and give her one piece of advice, what would it be? What's the first thing that springs to your mind?
Oh gosh. Well, as we identified, 5-year-old me, my parents had just split up too, just started at school, and I would say to her, because I have dyslexia and it's very mild, but it did definitely was irritated. I definitely felt really ashamed of it for a very, very long time. I didn't want people to know and I wanted to hide it. But what I say to my children now, and I wish somebody said to me, is that, like, just try your best. That's absolutely brilliant. But I think what I'd say to 5-year-old me is this won't matter. This won't matter. You will actually, your creative side, the way you problem solve, the way you look at things and have to be more creative will be why you will create basically your own job. Because I mean, when I was at school, this wasn't a job, doing social media training. And I suppose what our children will do probably won't be a job now. So I think I'd say, yeah, that it doesn't, like, it doesn't matter that you can't probably string, spelling tests were the absolute worst for me. I hated those. They'd be the worst day ever. So I think I would say, that shame and that pity and that, like, feeling, that won't matter. Like, there will be AI and it will be able to write your presentations if you really want it to. It will be able to spell check everything for you. You could have your words dictated, like, it won't matter. So I think nothing is a barrier and you're absolutely fine as you are. And, it will change and
I love that.
that
And I
won't matter
love
anymore.
that you've reframed that actually having that meant you had to be more creative. And actually, that's then a superpower,
Definitely.
a total superpower, that if you
Yeah.
hadn't had that, you might not have explored as much. So I love that reframe. I think that's a perfect way to end chatting to you. Thank you so, so much. I could honestly chat to you all afternoon. It has been absolutely great chatting to you. I'm going to put the links in so people can find you and follow you. But thank you very much for being here. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
So I want to give another huge, huge thank you to Caroline. It was incredible chatting to her the other day. So she's Caroline Wilson from Hot Toddi. I have put all her links in the show notes. Please go and connect with her. Please give the podcast some love and share it with somebody that you think might need to hear this. Thank you very much for listening, and don't forget, let's get talking.